que pensaos las notas que tomáis porque es más de escuchar. Y dicho esto, empiezo. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to tell you the story of the frankly bizarre Mitford family, which could be turned, and in fact has been turned, into films, series, documentaries. However, to be honest, I cannot imagine how you could make a documentary about them because their story is so incredible that I don't think you could really present it as non-fiction. The Mitford sisters were the first celebrities who were famous just because of who they were, rather than for the things that they did. They were a bit like the Kardashians of the 20th century, but actually interesting and actually consequential in politics, art, and history. The Mitford sisters were the 6 daughters of a noble but poor English family. And it's hard to believe that they were actually sisters because they couldn't be any more different. They could have fought World War II by themselves at the Christmas dinner table if they had wanted to, because among them there were 2 fascists, a communist, a duchess, and a farmer. To stick to the truth, there was also a brother, he was also a fascist, but in comparison to his sisters, he was quite boring and conventional, so we'll just him for the purposes of this speech. And in fact, it's the Mitford sisters, not the Mitford siblings. So in a little bit more detail, but not too much because I don't want to make this speech too long, and in no particular order, let's look at the sisters. Unity, one of the sisters, had the shortest but possibly the most memorable life of the 6 because of her attachment to Adolf Hitler. Apparently, she was conceived in the town of Swastika in Canada, and her middle name was Valkyrie, so there might have been some name determinism at play there. It is believed that she felt a bit inferior to her beautiful and very accomplished sisters. So in order to distinguish herself from them and to shock society, she turned to fascism. She traveled in 1934, together with her sister Diana. She traveled to the Nuremberg rally, the famous Nazi rally, and she was so impressed by it that she decided that she had to meet Hitler. She believed he was the greatest man of all time. In order to fulfill this goal and to cross it off her bucket list, as we were saying this morning, she went back to Munich, enrolled in a language school, as you do, and then stalked Hitler until 10 months later, she spent 10 months stalking him, he invited her to his table. They became very close, and apparently the admiration that she felt for him was mutual because he described her as a perfect specimen of Aryan womanhood. In 1939, when the 2 countries that she loved, if that was possible, went to war, she shot herself in the head, but in true Mitford fashion, she survived and lived for another 9 years. Diana, the other fascist sister, the one who went to Nuremberg with Unity, married a baron. Incidentally, this baron was the heir of the Guinness fortune. Guinness as in the beer brewery, Guinness. Very soon, Diana left her husband, the Guinness baron, for the leader of the British fascists, and they got married at Joseph Goebbels' house. Goebbels being Hitler's propaganda minister, of course. During World War II, in the UK, she was imprisoned because of her connections. And afterwards, she moved to Paris, became a writer with some success, and died in the 2003 heatwave. By the way, I think someone's mic is on. Teresa, I think is yours. That might be, yeah, thank you. So moving on to Nancy. Nancy Mitford, the eldest.
No se escucha, ¿eh?
No entiendo. Hello, can you hear me?
Ahora,
That's
now.
better.
Is everything okay now?
Yeah, it just started cutting after Nancy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll go back for a little bit. Sorry about that. So Nancy. Nancy was the eldest of the sisters, and she was a writer. She was quite successful. She wrote novels and historical biographies. She was quite fond of the French royalty and wrote quite a remarkable biography of Louis XIV. She got married. The marriage didn't go really well, and then she became the lifelong lover of one of General de Gaulle's closest associates. Lots of name dropping in this speech, I'm sorry. In any case, her story seems a bit boring after the two fascist sisters, so let's just leave Nancy aside and move on to Jessica. Jessica was the communist sister. Growing up, Jessica the communist shared a room with Unity, the Hitler fan, and in order to be able to live together, they painted a chalk line on the floor to divide the room so that each of them could fill their side with symbols of their ideology. Quite understandably, Jessica was known as the red sheep of the family. When she was 19 years old, she fell in love with a man who happened to be her second cousin or something like that. She gave up on all her privileges and they eloped together. Their elopement must have been really romantic because they eloped to the Spanish Civil War, as you do. Later on, they moved to the United States. After Jessica's husband/cousin was killed in World War II, she became a civil rights activist and then also a writer and also an investigative journalist who published a book where she denounced the abusive practices of funeral homes. And also she became a singer for a while because why not? She was a Mitford sister. She could do whatever she wanted. The next sister on our list is Deborah. Deborah married a duke and turned his mansion, Chatsworth House, which you may know from the Pride and Prejudice film adaptation, into a very successful tourist attraction in England. As you might imagine, those grand country houses are very expensive to maintain, so they did that in order to be able to keep the house. And Deborah also became a writer, of course. And finally, we have the sixth sister, Pamela. Pamela apparently wanted to live a quiet life in the countryside. She wanted to go for walks in the fields, tend to her orchard, take care of her chickens. But then she married a physicist who also happened to be a millionaire, who was also bisexual, and who also had 6 wives. After they got divorced, Pamela spent the rest of her life as a companion to another woman, and her sisters believed that she was a lesbian, but I couldn't confirm that. So that's the Mitford sisters for you. What roller coaster lives they led. No wonder, I'm sure you'll agree, that the rest of us have such boring little lives because they hoarded all the excitement. Thank you. And apologies.